All right, so I want to go through a couple of things before we go back to the lesson about the projects. So take a minute right now, if you haven't already, to look over your rubric that I gave you back that was ready for your project. And also take this handout and look over plagiarism today. And I know you've already gone over an English class, but I just want to make sure that you're clear on what plagiarism is, because 7 of the projects had plagiarism in them in this class. So that's half the class who plagiarized. And that's a really big deal. So I want to go through and make sure you'll understand what plagiarism is and when you can and can't take out content from sources. So if you have a star on your rubric, that means you need to correct something. It doesn't mean that you plagiarize, but it does mean you have to correct something that's important, because it could be a citation problem, it could be a quotation problem, or it could be plagiarism. But there's something that needs to change in your paper. If you don't have a star in yours, then you're fine, you're clear. But read through the rubric really fast. Let me have any questions about what I wrote down. And then I want to go through what plagiarism is with everybody, just to make sure we're all clear on that. Did everybody find their project? Okay. Any questions about what I wrote down so far? Okay. So there are 4 kinds of plagiarism. And I'm going to go through them so everybody have a handout about that. So the first kind, which you all are familiar with, would be verbatim plagiarism, where you just copy and paste things from an article without quoting it. But there's other kinds too. And number 2 is more of what I saw in the project than anything else, where you change 1 or 2 words in the sentence, and that's still plagiarism. So you can take a sentence from an article and change a word or 2, and that's still plagiarizing the article. So, and you can see the handout shows you ways to rephrase the sentence in a way that's not plagiarism, and but just have the same sentence structure, the same subject, the same verb, and changing one adjective is still plagiarism. So be aware of that, because I think that was the most common one that I saw on the projects was number 2. Number 3 on the next page, idea theft. That would be if you were to get the idea from an article and not quote the article and not cite the source of your idea. So if you read something that you get an idea from that place, you have to make sure you give credit to that place. I didn't see that in your projects. You all had a source for your ideas. Number 4 is probably the one that's strangest, but you can self-plagiarize. You can plagiarize yourself. If you had a paper written earlier for a different class, or even for the same class, but just an earlier paper, and you use that idea or those words from your earlier paper, and you don't give credit to yourself from an earlier time, that's plagiarism.
Are we citing it by putting a heading?
No, because it's considered published. If you submit a paper to a teacher, it's considered a published paper. In college, I almost kicked out of college for this. I was a senior. Did I ever tell you this? I was a senior in college. It was March, so I was about to graduate from UD. And my professor called me into his office. He said, what's happened with your paper? Because I had fonts that are different kinds of fonts in my paper. It was a rough draft paper too. It wasn't even final copy. But I had different fonts in my paper. And he's like, well, why is it all these different kinds of fonts? And I said, well, I had other papers I am using. I had an earlier paper I wrote for a class last year, and then a paper I'm using this year that I wrote. And he said, well, that's plagiarism, because this paper was already submitted to a different class. You have to cite yourself. And
So did you cite yourself, or did you redo the entire paper?
yeah, I had to cite myself. Yeah.
So you don't get points off for that.
How do you cite yourself? Holly and Nicole, 2003, and you write the title of your paper, and
So then no bad.
well, they could have. I mean, he relented because he knew I didn't know. But if I wasn't forthcoming and explained to him what happened, he could have gone forward with it, and yeah. It was weird too, it's a rough draft. Like I wasn't really, I thought a rough draft paper, you didn't have to be as careful, but according to my professor, even a rough draft, you have to, that's still plagiarism too. If you're not careful with your quotations and citations, even in a rough draft. So be aware of that in college. If you do submit a paper and you use your ideas even in a new paper, you still have to cite yourself.
Your ideas.
Yeah, even idea, you can see, because number 3, idea theft, where you get the idea from a different paper, you don't cite it.
I guess I just cite myself when
I think this is a good thing you're going over this. 'Cause, like, I
Yeah.
know myself.
I know, well, I didn't know either until I was caught. I mean, and so until I was able to get that. I mean, 2 months to graduate, I thought I was gonna be kicked out of UD, so that was pretty stressful. But that was like, he made a huge deal about it. I thought for sure, it was Friday when he called me to his office, and like, he didn't resolve it until next week. And like, he asked me about this book that I used. So I cited a book in my rough draft that I had used 2 years ago. And he said, well, what is this book? Where were you guys?
We were at Ms. house getting some furniture for her.
At her house. Okay. Because according to her, because I asked her about this,
What did she say?
she said they were gone an hour ago. They should be back.
We left during lunch.
They should be
like, half-
penalized if they're not in class. It should have been 20 minutes to pick it up.
You gotta be kidding me.
So you don't agree? Like were you,
Nah, I do not really agree with that.
okay,
I mean, we left literally halfway through last period,
okay.
and it took a little bit. I mean,
And we saw them here like not
Yeah.
more than 30 minutes ago.
I guess let her know that, you see, because,
I can talk to her if you want, but
yeah,
kind of annoying me to do favors for people, you know?
yeah.
They penalize you for it.
Well, let her know what, your side of the story, because according to her, she said that you were gone an hour ago and she'll be back.
Are my boys over there skipping class?
Apparently, I don't know. We'll have to figure out what happened. We'll have to see, hear both sides of the story and see.
I can't believe you guys are doing this without me.
I'll talk to her, and you should all talk to her too and let her know what happened and see what she says. Okay, so for Michael and Michael, look over your rubrics and let me know if any questions about what I wrote down. So I'm going through 7 people in this class plagiarized. I'm going through plagiarism and what happened and just ways to what is and what is not plagiarism. But yeah, I'm going through this because when you go to college, especially, I mean, the penalties for plagiarism is really severe. I mean, it's usually zeros, and that's usually the least severe penalty. You can be expelled, suspended, kicked out of college. And if you are getting your master's or PhD, it can be more severe consequences you go up in higher education. So it's important that you're aware of plagiarism and the different kinds of plagiarism. That's why I'm going through this today with y'all. But it doesn't matter if it's a research paper, if it's a poster board, or if it's a PowerPoint presentation. If you are anything that is your work, no matter if it's a poster board, no matter if it's a website, a blog post, it doesn't matter. If you are writing anything, it has to be in your own words. Unless you have a quotation around it, it's considered to be your own words. And that's plagiarism if you don't have a quotation mark around things that are not your own words. Yeah.
Should we just like cite ourselves in every paper?
What do you
Like,
mean?
to make sure, like, if
Well,
we
no,
see
I mean,
something-
it's a paper that you have published, right? It's a paper you've turned into a teacher. Or a blog post, like those kind of things. Like if it's not published like that, where you haven't given it to a teacher or put it online, then you would not cite yourself.
And do you get
Yes.
penalized for citing yourself, like using your own papers?
Mm-mm.
No, so you can totally do that.
Oh, sure. I mean, professionals do it all the time. I mean, people who write, research papers or books, I mean, they will definitely cite themselves. So professionals will do that constantly.
Right.
So no, you're not penalized for it at all. programs.
Wait, so what if you like wrote a research paper, so now you have like knowledge about this one subject,
Mhm.
so you just like learned about it. So even if you wrote about it before, if you're not actually looking back at that work, do you still need to cite it?
If you're not using that work, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
So if it's just like stuff you knew and you wrote about in that paper, but you're not even like looking about it at it.
Yeah, but if you're using facts and figures and things like that, I mean, you definitely would want to cite those
Yeah.
again, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, if it's not, if you're not using things like that, statistics or, you know, then no, you wouldn't.
So I put the two websites at the bottom.
Mhm.
Was it because I didn't like quote?
It's, well, I forget, everybody's different. Let me see really fast, what I wrote down figures. I don't,
Like I put those at the bottom. I didn't have-
okay, so a few things. So one thing is the English form. So you have to make that English. We have the title, we have the author, right? The other thing is that this right is visualized, that's from the website. And that's not quotation marks or those things, that's should be in your words, it's not quotation mark.
So I should
So that is the reward.
reword.
Yes, because that's word for word from the article, or almost word for word.
Yeah, I know, I did, like, it wasn't word for word. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too close.
So what do you, so what am I gonna?
So you, so this is right part that
If you defend it,
and then in the point, you need to change this in
So do you want an additional page to this?
right where you have title, the author, like, we want to put that in, right?
I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
I mean, you can't like tell you know, it's like, yeah, like, if you defend it, then I guess.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're all clear MLA form, right? You know, and how to cite. It's not just the web link that you need to have. You need to also have the title, the author, the date, if you know that. So MLA form means more than just the web address. Any other questions about what you need to do for your project? So that's due on Friday. So if you have a star, you need to turn in by Friday, or it'll be a 0 if it's not turned in on Friday. If you don't have a star, then you're done. You have the grade, and you don't have to do anything else. I want to pass out this worksheet or this handout too. I'm going to go over this with you all. Yes.
Did all your people say there's gonna be a test next week?
Oh, yeah, yes, there is. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, Wednesday we'll have a test. So not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday we have a test of what we're gonna be learning about this week.
So you
So-
haven't started learning it yet? Okay.
No, we haven't.
Is it, is that, so that's gonna be on the finance group, right?
Yes,
Okay. And then we're gonna have Thursday and Friday to review.
exactly.
Okay. And do you think that will be like, we'll be able to cover everything, or are we like maybe just responsible for doing that?
I mean, I won't give you like things to answer. Like I don't have a review packet where you have to answer questions.
Yeah,
So it's not gonna be in-class work you have to do.
okay.
And so I don't really think that we're gonna need a whole lot of time in class to study. It's more of what you need to do on your own.
Is it the same as most finals where it's just the test questions?
It won't be the same exact test questions, but it'll be similar, but it won't be the same exact. Because you have to know more than just your test. And so the final exam should be everything in your study guide. So the test will definitely help you study, but it won't be the same exact questions on the final exam.
So we need to
So-
know, so if we know all the study guides.
Yeah, the study guides.
So we don't
Yeah.
even need to bother necessarily doing the test, just the study guides.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the study guides. Now, the test can definitely help you though, study for the test.
Yeah.
But study guides have everything you need to know for the final exam.
Okay.
So there could be things that are not on the test that I could ask you about on the final exam. But it's on the study guide.
What about like packets that you can test and stuff?
That won't be, no, I mean, just what's on your study guides. Yeah.
Because wasn't there like a question on the test that was from the rule of nines worksheet?
That was
but
our study
wasn't
guide too.
on the- Oh, it was on the, oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah, everything needs to know your study guides. There won't be any surprises. Any questions about that?
Hey, Miss Holly,
Yes.
the grade link, nothing popped up on the screen, and I tried on my computer and on my phone, and I didn't see anything. So I didn't know that there was a class today, or I don't know what the homework is either.
Oh, okay. Homework, nothing today.
Okay.
You're saying grade link is blank for homework?
Yeah, it's just blank. Every other class is there, but yours.
That's weird.
It's happened before to me, but I don't know.
Does everybody else, when they see, do what?
Last week, like when I looked at your class, the grade link was like,
Really?
yeah.
Huh.
You put yours under announcements, don't you?
I mean, sometimes it happens that way. I don't mean to, but for right now, it's not. So nobody sees the grade link homework? You all see it?
I saw it yesterday. Yeah.
That is so weird. I don't
But
understand
it's
grade
weird,
link.
like it works sometimes and it's sometimes like it's kind of
Grade
off and
link
on, but I
itself, it's
saw it
probably
yesterday.
grade link's fault, because it's so.
Yeah.
random. Like other classes too, we're giving you different issues.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, just email me. I can give you the homework through email.
Awesome, I'll do that.
Yeah, so the plan for this week and for next week is to do chapter 5 for Tuesday through Friday, and then next week, Monday, we'll do a little bit more. It's more like a lab on Monday than a lesson.
Okay.
Tuesday we'll review, and we'll test on Wednesday.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And the plan is to have labs on Monday and Friday, and then basically all we'll have is lessons Tuesday through Thursday. So it will not be a long test.
Perfect.
But that will be on the final exam too. So I give you a study guide on Monday to study for your test for chapter 5. And then you should have your study guides from chapters 1, 3, and 4. Into chapter 2.
Okay.
No, it'll just be your chapter study guides. Yeah, there won't be anything new. So it'll just be ones you've already been given for chapter tests. Okay, so this handout, the other hand I gave you, integrity, did I talk about this before? Sometimes I know when the year begins, I talk about integrity. Did I ever tell
I remember you telling us this story.
a story?
The story about your algebra.
Oh, yeah, down there, yeah. I remember this year I told you all that. Yeah, but integrity, we didn't ever talk about that. So to have integrity, like it means that like it means to be whole. It means that you're intact. Like you don't have different parts of yourself in different places. Like if you don't have integrity, like it could be two-faced, for example, like somebody who is a hypocrite, doesn't have integrity. Because they're different people. You know, if they're at home, they're a different person than if they're at work, for example. So somebody who acts different ways in different situations doesn't have integrity. Somebody who is the same person in every situation has integrity. And what does that mean? Like, so you could be like around your friends and be really goofy, right? And then go home and like you're more uptight because you're around your parents. Like that doesn't mean you don't have integrity. Like that's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is that you have different morals in different situations. Like you're somebody who like maybe it's daily mass with your friends and prays the rosary with them, and then goes out, drinks and parties, and that's not integrity. If you are, going in one place and trying, and being there on people and saying that that you're holy and acting like you are, but then going to a different place and just doing horrible things, that's not integrity. That's living a double life. That's more of what I mean. So it also happens in academics too, when you could, like for plagiarism, for example, when you plagiarize, that's lying. Or if you cheat on a test, that's lying. And that's not having integrity when you do those things. Now, I'm not saying that in this situation, like for those who didn't cite your sources, I'm not saying that you all did that purposely, but I'm just saying that when you do those things, whether it's intentional or not, is a form of being dishonest. Because what you're doing is that when you have something written down, it's not in quotation marks and you give it to me, it's understood that that's your own work. And so if you don't have it in quotation marks, or if you change a couple words, then it's saying this is my own work, it's my own original thought, when it's really not. And that's a form of dishonesty. And cheating on homework, whether you copy down homework from somebody else, give somebody the answers, or it's on a test, that's also dishonest too. And so that's one way that integrity would be just the opposite, where you show your own work, your own understanding. And I wanted to go through that today with you all in like different ways. Now you might think, yeah, I'm not going to cheat. I never have cheated. And why do I need to know about this? Well, you might have friends who do, and it's good to understand why you shouldn't. And if you go to college, you're going to see it in college. Like it's more prevalent in college than in high school. Many people in college are under so much pressure. It's much more common there than it is in high school, I think. And so it is important before you go to college, or even this year, to just know why you wouldn't want to do that. Because when you're tested, if you don't think about the person you want to be, and why you do the things you do, then you're going to just go along with the crowd. And if you're pressured, you're going to do what they say to do. Think about, like we talk about, to your parents or the people, about your friends. You probably have a few words that you describe your friends with, like, she's the funny one, he's the hardworking, serious person, he's the business person, like he's the athletic guy. Like you talk about people, usually like you put them in categories and boxes, right? People do the same thing for you too. Like you don't really want to think about that sometimes probably, but people describe you too in a few words. And you want to think about, what words do I want people to describe me with? What person do I want to be? And your actions will define you. And so little things like this define you too. Choices you make every day define who you are. And you want to think about what person I want to be, because if you're not intentional about it, you're going to just be made into a person you don't want to be. As you get older, if you don't decide for yourself who you want to be, your friends will decide who you are going to be. And you're going to be living the life of the peer group that you're around and not for yourself. So it is important right now in your life to decide who you want to be and why you want to do the things you want to do. And so I want to go through, for cheating, for example, why people do cheat, their excuses for cheating, and why they're not good excuses. And so this handout, for the first one, it says, I wouldn't be able to pass a class without cheating. It's usually not true, especially for high school. I mean, it can happen, of course. People do have to repeat grades or repeat classes, but it's not very common. But even if it were to happen to you all, it's not the worst thing that happened to your life. I mean, it's happened to me before, as I've told you before. I failed algebra, and people fail classes, they repeat classes, and it's not the end of the world. You move on, you repeat the class, and you go on. So just because you failed a class doesn't mean you're a failure. School is not determining your worth. It doesn't determine your value. It's not the sole indicator of who you are or your worth or your future success. It's a tool to help you grow in life. And cheating robs you of of knowing that you did the best thing you could do, that at the end of the day, that you put in your best effort, that you tried your best. But if you don't put in your own work, if you take shortcuts, then you tell yourself that you couldn't have done it to begin with, and you rob yourself of knowing what you could have done. And so, as I mentioned before with my story about, trying my hardest and still failing algebra, but I stuck with it, and eventually I passed the class the next year. And I wouldn't have had that success. I wouldn't have had that feeling of putting in the work and getting that success without putting in the hard work before failing the class. So living a life that you're proud of is a lot more important. Even failing a class, it's better to fail a class, but know you did your best, than to pass a class without doing your best and taking a shortcut. On the next page, for excuse number 2, this is really common for a lot of students, where you feel like you understand material already, you know the problem, already the material, it's easy, so it's just busy work. And so I'll copy the homework, but I wouldn't cheat on a test. I just want to get this homework done with, because it's pointless homework. It's just drilling. It's things that I don't need to do. But the thing is that just because you can rationalize something, just because you can say, there's a good outcome from this, doesn't mean that's right. I mean, everything that anybody does is for a good reason. I mean, people don't do things because they want to do something bad. Nobody does things just because they want to do an evil thing. They do bad things because they want a good thing from that bad thing. So just because you can rationalize something does not mean that it's a good reason to do it. And I mentioned on here about drug addicts because it's a good analogy, I think, to make. Nobody who's an addict wanted to be an addict. Nobody who is addicted to drugs wanted to be addicted to drugs. It's a horrible thing to have addiction. So nobody goes into that wanting to be an addict. It happens, but they don't choose that. Same thing with anything else in life. If you make bad choices, you don't want to be tied to them. But you become enslaved to them the more you do that thing. And so little things that you make, little actions you make are important because they do shape you and they do define your path. And so it's important that you do act the way you want to act in everything you do in your life. For number 3, I'm helping my friend out. So it's very common to ask for help from people. They just want the answers. And so people ask to just give the answers to them because they didn't have time, they were up all night. It's not helping to just give the answer to somebody else. You can let them know. I mean, you can help them, but don't give them the answers because that robs them the chance of doing their own work. They can't learn without doing their own work. So if somebody asks to just give them the answers, you can say, I can help you with the homework, but I can't just give you my work. It's very different to help them, but not give them the answers. Number 4 is not hurting anybody. Cheating hurts a lot of different people. It hurts really everybody involved. It hurts the student, it hurts the classmates, it hurts the teacher. Everybody is affected by cheating. Because the student lies to the teacher, basically. When a student cheats, whether it's turning in homework that's not their own work or on a test, it's lying to the teacher, and that hurts the teacher. It hurts their classmates too, because a good teacher is going to gauge the class's understanding based on the homework, based on the tests. And so if the students are copying their work and not doing their own work, the teacher can't know the blind spots. They can't know the student's understanding of the work. They can't correct those misunderstandings. And so a teacher can't teach effectively if they don't know what the students know what they don't know. And so cheating affects a lot of different people. And of course, with valedictorian, salutatorian, with scholarships at college admissions, those all rely on, point, like a 10th of a grade point or 100th of a grade point. So if people are cheating, well, that could be the difference between being a valedictorian and being nothing, or going to a college or not going to the college you want to go to. So cheating can really affect people too. And that's a major way it can. It usually doesn't affect it that dramatically, but it can. And the other thing too is that if you cheat in small ways, maybe you'll cheat in big ways too. And if you start having the habit of taking small shortcuts, it could start to happen where you take larger shortcuts. Your will to resist the temptation goes away the more times you do something. And the last one, and I hear this a lot too, it's like, I don't need to know this material. I don't want to be a scientist. I don't want to be a mathematician. I don't need to know math or science when I get older. But it's not really the point of a lot of these classes is to learn the material. I mean, it's definitely is part of it, but school is a training. It's a place to train you. It's like sports when you do practicing over and over again. The practice is not really the point. The practice trains you. And so, every day you do drills in sports. That helps strengthen you and makes you a better athlete. But you can't remember a certain day what drill you did or what certain practice you did, but you still are an athlete because you did those drills every day. Same thing in school. The things you did every day do shape you. You might forget what a polynomial is after you get out of high school, but it doesn't mean that algebra was a waste of time, because algebra helped train your mind for critical thinking, problem solving, and that made you a better person because you did those things. You learn how to be a better student by doing those things. So you could forget math and Latin and Spanish and history, but it doesn't mean it was a waste of time, because those things still shaped you to be a better student. You learned how to memorize facts, how to write papers, how to study for a test, and that was all worthwhile to do. And I think that's it for, I have a lot more on this, but I think that's all you have for yours. So I just wanted to go through those things with you all. Plagiarism, again, it's a very serious thing. I know at the school it's not always treated as a serious thing, but other colleges treat it very seriously. And I just want to make sure you all know that when you do go up to college, that it's penalized very harshly. We had a meeting this morning about plagiarism with the teachers. And from here on out, it's going to be penalized very harshly. From my understanding, it's going to be all zeros for any assignment, if not more penalties. But I know that at least it'll be a 0 for any future assignments. Any questions about that before we go on? Okay, I want to show you the movie that we started last week. For those who are here, you have the handouts for the movie. I'll turn this off really fast.